All right, good morning. It's 8 o'clock, so we'll go and get started. So this is week 5 now. We're a little over halfway through the course. What we'll be talking about today is we'll do a little review on while loops, which was last week, and then we'll start talking about the material for this week, which are for loops and nested for loops. All right, so for while loops, it's what we covered last time. But a while loop is just a subset of loops in general. So what does a loop do? A loop lets you execute the same piece of code over and over and over again. And what I mean by that is, let's say that you wanted the user to type in a number, right? Let's have the user type in a number. Let's tell them to type in a number. Print, please enter a number, right? We'll tell them that, make a scanner so that we can read what they type in. System.in. So that's making our scanner. We're going to tell them to type something in. We'll let them type something in. Number is equal to the scanner extent. And then we'll just print it back out. Let's say we want to add up a bunch of numbers. All right, so make a scanner. Keep track of the total. Like I said, we'll just add up a bunch of numbers. It'll start off being 0. Tell the user to enter a number. We will get the number from the user, add it to our total, and then at the end we'll print out the total. Print out total, right? System out ln total is whatever the total is, right? That's just a quick little program that will do a sum, keep track of how many numbers you typed in. Well, not the number of numbers, but the sum of all the numbers you've typed in, right? That's what that does. You make a scanner. We have a variable total, starts out at being 0 because we haven't added anything to it yet. We tell the user, type in a number. We get whatever they type in. Then we add it to our total. And then we just tell them what the total is, right? So if we run that, anyway, so please enter a number. Let's just say 4. The total is 4, and that's correct, right? Put a space in there. All right, so that works for one number, but what about 2 numbers? So what should we do for 2 numbers? Well, we need to do this twice, right? So that'll ask them for their first number, and then we paste it, copy and paste it. Okay, now we'll ask them for 2 numbers. So that'll be the first number, and then that'll be the second number. Okay, let's run it. Sure enough, we put in 4, put in 3, and the total is 7. And that works. Okay, that's for 2 numbers. What about 3 numbers? Should we copy and paste this again? All right, now that let's do 3 numbers, right? So we run it, and sure enough, 1, 2, 3, and the total is 6. Well, what about 50 numbers? You can see how this quickly gets out of hand. And that's really the purpose of a loop, is when you want to execute the same code over and over again, you can't copy and paste this 50 times if you want them to type it in 50. If you want 50 numbers, it's impractical to copy and paste the same code 50 times. It's impractical. I mean, so I say 50 times, what about 5,000 times? Same thing, it's impractical to copy and paste this 5,000 times, right? So that's the purpose of a loop. So instead, let's put this in a little loop. Make a while loop like we had last time. So what does a while loop look like? We'll say while something is true, then I want to do this code. Now that lets me repeat this code how many ever times that I want to. The only question is, how many times do I want to do it? What is this something is true? So we got to have a way to make sure that we stop doing the loop, right? So in the loop, we're going to say enter a number, we're going to type in the number, and then we're going to add to our total. And that works fine. We just got to figure out what this is. So you also have to have a way to stop the loop. You got to make sure at some point this is false so you can go on about the rest of your program. So let's change this a little bit. So we say, please enter a number, or say, put in a -1 to exit, right? If we tell them that. So what does that mean? That's kind of saying that I should keep typing in a number, but whenever I'm done, type in a -1, and that's going to tell my program that I should stop, right? Well, just printing that out to the screen doesn't make it happen. I have to have my program check if what they type in is a -1, then I want to stop my program. And -1 is just a number I chose. You could be whatever you want it to be. I could say, if you type this in, then terminate the program. Sure, that would work perfectly fine, as long as I make this appropriate, this condition appropriate. But that's kind of hard for the user to type in. So let's just leave it at -1. So if the user types in -1, I want to stop this loop. So what I need to say here is, while the number does not equal -1, right? One other little change you have to have in here. So, inside of these brackets is another code block. And this number exists inside the code block. And what I mean when I say it exists, I am declaring this number inside the code block. I'm saying int number inside of here, inside of these two braces. That means this number variable, it does not exist outside of these braces. These braces are what we call a code block. So you have them here as part of your while loop. You have these braces here and here. That is the code block of your main. You have the braces here and here. That is the code block of your class. And so these are kind of nested code blocks. You have this outermost code block. Inside of it, you have this main code block. Inside of it, you have this while loop code block. And so if you declare a variable inside of a code block, it does not exist outside of it. So this int number, it exists inside of here, but it does not exist inside the greater main function. Now, it does work the opposite way, meaning this total right here for main, it does exist inside of here because this while loop code block is inside of this one. It's nested inside of it. But so you can think of it, you can go down, but you can't go up. So this total, this variable can go down into this code block, but this int number, it cannot go up out of this one. So that's why the number here is kind of red in my IDE, because Java doesn't know what that number is, because it does not exist outside of these. The easy way to fix that is just to make it here. Let's say the number like that. And now we can't declare it anymore. We can use it, but we can't declare it. And now all the world's happy. So here I'm just saying that the number is equal to 0. And now I can use the number inside of all of here, inside this nested code block. So now let's look at what it does. So of course we still make our scanner. We have a variable that keeps track of the total. We want to do our loop here. So we have a variable called number, and we're going to just say it's equal to 0 to start. Here's the important part for the while loop. If this is true, all of the code gets executed. If this is false, it gets skipped. Okay, so let's imagine well, first of all, the number is 0. So we're right here, the first time we're going to say 0 does not equal to -1. And that is true. So we will do the loop. So we'll print out this right here. We'll have the user type in a number, and then we'll add it to our total. And so right here, the user typed in a new number. Let's imagine they type in 5. So they type in 5, we add it to our total. It's the end of the loop, so we go back up here and we check this again. So if they typed in a 5, we're going to say, okay, 5 does not equal -1. That is still true. So since that is true, we will do our loop again. We will print this out. We will have them type in another number, and we'll add it to our total. Let's imagine they type in 3. All right, we'll come back up here. 3 does not equal -1. That is still true. We will do our loop again. We will print this out. We will let the user type in another number, and we will add it to our total. So let's imagine this time they did type in a -1. They want to stop. Okay, so they type in a -1. We're going to add it to our total. We could do a check here. We could say if number does not equal -1. That way, if they do type in a -1, we don't want to add it to our total. You can add it to your total if you want to. Just depends on what kind of logic you're trying to do. But I'm going to say, okay, if they type in a -1, I don't want to add it to my total. Excuse me. If they type in something except -1, I'll add it to my number. All right. So let's imagine this time they did type in a -1. So number is -1. -1 does not equal -1. That is false. So I will not add it to my number. It skips over that. So now we're at the end of the loop. It goes back to the top of the loop. And now -1 does not equal -1. That is now false. So since that is false, I skip over all of the loop. I skip over it and I go to the next line, which this is just going to print out my total. So let's run this now. And now you can see I can type in as many numbers as I want, as many times as I want. You can do this thousands and millions and billions of times. And it all happens inside this little loop. That's the point of a loop, is to execute the same code over and over and over again, as long as this right here is true. All right, so I typed in all these numbers, and now we'll end it when I type in a -1. That's the end. Okay, and there you go. My total is this number. So that's how the while loop looks. Let's do one more quick thing with the while loop, and I'll make it look a little bit more like what your assignment was from last week. So instead of keeping track of that, we're going to ask the user if they want to do something. System.out.println, just print. Do you want to do something? And we'll let them, then we'll type in whatever their input is. It's a string. Was it scanner.next? There we go. So if they type in a yes, we want to do something. So we'll say while their input equals yes. Get rid of the rest of this. While their input is equal to yes, then we're going to do something, right? What are we going to do? I don't know. We'll still add up some numbers. Let's do our number scenario again. So if they want to do something, then we'll have them type in a number. Scanner.next int. Enter number. We'll have them type in a number, and then we'll add it to our total. And So after that, we need to ask them, do they still want to keep doing stuff? So we'll say system.out.println, just print. We'll say again, question mark. And then we'll get their input again. And then at the end, we can still print out the total. So really, this is a loop just about like the last one. Just instead of the -1 here, we're just going to type we're going to check if they type in a yes. So this is actually pretty close to how you should have done your previous assignment. So we make a scanner. We ask them, do you want to do something? That's kind of the initial question. Do you want to do something? Then we're going to get whatever their input is from the keyboard. And then we still have this total we use to keep track of how much they typed in. And so now we go to our while loop. So we're going to say, whatever you typed in, if you typed in a yes, if it equals ignoring the case, meaning it can be uppercase or lowercase, it's fine. So if you typed in yes, then we're going to do what's inside the loop. If you did not type in yes, it doesn't necessarily have to be no, but if this is false, meaning if they typed in anything except yes, then this will be false. It will skip the loop and it'll just go to the next line. So whatever they typed in the first time, let's say it's yes. They typed in yes, so we're going to ask them to put in a number. We get the number, and then we add it to our total. And then we're going to ask them, do you want to do it again? And we're going to get that input. So now this input can either be yes or something that is not yes. So they type it in, and we check it again. Did you type in a yes or something else? So let's see that in action. All right, do you want to do something? If we type in no, then it skips over the loop and it just goes to the end where your total is 0. And that's right. Let's run it again. If I type in anything except yes, the same thing. And that's fine. Okay, now let's see, they type in yes. Okay, so now we're in our loop, enter a number, enter 1. So now, do I want to do it again? If I type in no, then that's the end of the loop because I typed in a no here. That's at the end of the loop. We check it again. Is your input yes? And that ends up being false. So we just skip the loop and execute the code after. All right, let's run it again. Do you want to do something? We type in yes, type in a 3. Again, anything except yes. And again, that kind of it terminates my loop and goes to the code after the loop. Do I want to do something? Yes. And now, of course, if I type in yes or again, it keeps going through my loop. As long as I type in yes. Now I can type in anything except yes, and the loop ends. The way you structured your assignment should have been pretty close to this. Obviously, you had to get more information. You had to get like their username and a bunch of scores and do some calculations and stuff like that. But the general structure should have been something pretty close to this. So that's a kind of a recap of your while loop. So now we are going to talk about a for loop. So a for loop is just another kind of loop. Just like the while loop, it allows you to execute the same code over and over and over again. A for loop does the same thing, just the conditions here are a little bit different. And let's see that in action. Let's delete all this stuff. We'll still have our scanner. And a for loop looks like this. For initial, and I'll explain what they mean. And then condition. Oops. And then update. That's what a for loop looks like. What I mean by initial, condition, and update Initial is some kind of initialization that you want to happen one time at the beginning of the loop. And I'll show you plenty of examples of this. The condition is what you check to see if you want to still keep doing the loop. That is the equivalent of, actually, I'll show you the equivalent while loop. So the equivalent while loop would be the initial, while condition, do some code and update. And for this, do some code. There we go. Those two are kind of equivalent to each other. The initial is some kind of initialization we want to happen one time. This condition is what we check to see if we want to keep doing the loop, just like here in the while loop. And the update is some kind of change that we're making to what this condition is. And you kind of have the same thing here in the while loop. In our previous example with the while loop, the update would be something like whenever I'm asking the user if they want to keep doing it again. Because in our example, we were just checking, is the input yes, right? If the input, if that was true, then we did some code, and then we said again, do you want to do it again? That's your input. So that's kind of the update step. But this is how it works right here for the for loop. All right, so let's look at doing something with the for loop. The for loop is a better choice if you know exactly how many times that you want to do something. That's the better use case for a for loop. If you don't know how many times, a while loop is probably better. But if you do know exactly how many times you want to do something, then a for loop works a lot better. Let's say we want to count the number of numbers. We want to just count the numbers between 1 and 10. All right. We want to print out 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. We just want to print those numbers out. So I could do this, system out.println 0. Well, let's just do it that many times, how many ever this is. I don't want to type this in forever. There we go. We want to count from 0 to 5, right? Will this do it? This will count from 0 to 5, right? Oops. Let me get rid of that. There we go. There you go. It counts from 0 to 5. All right, let's do 0 to 10. All right, well, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, actually 11, right? This will count from 0 to 11. And sure enough, there it does. There's 0 to 11. All right, let's do 0 to 500. Well, just like when I was talking about earlier, you're not going to copy and paste this 500 times. You're just not. It's impractical. Because then what if I want to count to 5 billion? You're not going to copy and paste this 5 billion times. All right. So let's put it in a loop, but we're going to use a for loop because we know how many times that we want it to be executed. I've already told you, let's count from 0 to 10. Okay. So here's how we do it with the for loop. We use the word for. We have the initial condition, which will say the number, this number variable starts out being 0. Now, this is the condition. We want to keep doing the loop as long as it's less than or equal to 10. Let me type this and then I'll explain to you why. That will count from 0 to 10. And why is that? Remember, this is the initial condition. So one time at the beginning, I'm going to say this number is equal to 0. Okay. This is the condition I'm going to check. Is this true or false? So the first time number is 0. So I'm going to say, okay, 0 less than or equal to 10. That is true. So since that's true, I'm going to execute my code inside this loop. And so this is just going to print out 0 because the number is 0. At the end of the loop, it's going to do this update. So we're going to say, okay, the number is, we're just going to add 1 onto the number. So now number is 1. Okay, since number is 1, I'm going to do my check. 1 less than or equal to 10. Notice that I did not do this again. This is only one time whenever the loop gets ready to start. It does not happen each time in the loop, but just one time at the beginning of the loop. So at the beginning, number is 0, 0 less than 10. That's true. So we execute the code. Now we're at the end of the loop. We go to the update. We add 1 onto the number. So now number is equal to 1. So now we check it again. 1 less than or equal to 10. That's true. So we execute the code. And now number is 1. So we print out 1. It's the end of the loop. We do the update. Since number is 1 and we add 1 onto it, number is now 2. Do the check. 2 less than or equal to 10. That's true. So we execute the code. We print out 2. So on and so forth. Eventually, let's say number is going to be 9. It's going to keep counting. So number is 9. So 9 less than or equal to 10. That's true. We'll print out 9. Into the loop. We'll add 1 onto it. Number is now 10. 10 less than or equal to 10. That's true. Execute the code. We print out 10. Into the loop. 10 plus 1 is 11. So now 11 less than or equal to 10. That is now false. So we go to the code after the loop. Here is after the loop. And let's run this and we'll see it will count from 0 to 10. And there you go. It goes 0 to 10, and then it just prints after the loop. We wanted to do to 100. Easy enough. We just got to change this number about how many times it gets executed. There you go. You see it counts all the way up to 100. You count up to whatever that is. You, for some reason, you want to do it that many times. It's taking it a minute. You can see it kind of counting up as it's doing all this work. Oh, that's a really big number. It might take a while. All right, I'm going to stop it early. That's a big number. Let's make it something more reasonable. Run it. You see it executing it. And there it got to the end. It did the loop that many times. And then we got to after the loop. So in general, a for loop, you use it when you know how many times you want to do something. And this is kind of the general form it takes. Generally, your variable will start out to be 0. It does not have to. There are reasons why you could have it be something different. But in general, you want it started out to be 0. And then here you put how many times you want it to happen. Or when do you want it to stop? And then there is how you update it. So that's the for loop. So I did say you want to use this whenever you know how many times you want to do it. That's 95% the truth. Let's say you do want to execute it a specific number of times, but you want the user to tell you how many times to do it. Let's look at that example. So we'll ask the user how many times. We'll say, how many times do you want to do the loop? and then we'll get that input from them. Scanner dot next int. So actually, called variable times. So we're going to tell the user how many times. We're just going to print out how many times. We're going to let the user type that in. Times. How many times do you want to do this? So now the number can still start out to be 0, but then this right here, instead of less than this, specific number, we can just put times here. Still the same update. Maybe instead of how many times, we could be more descriptive. Highest number to count or something. I don't know. Whatever text you want to print out to the user. So here we're going to print out, for the user to type in the highest number. We're going to read that number from them. And here we're still going to do our for loop, but instead of a specific number here, we're just going to do it the number of times that the user said they want to do it. So now if we run this, highest number to count, let's say 6, and there you go. It counts up to 6. If I run it again, I can put whatever that is. That might take a while. Yeah, that's going to take a minute to finish, but it's going to count up how many ever times it was that I typed in. I'm going to go ahead and stop it early. I don't want that to run forever. See if I just type in, whatever that is. There you go. It counts up that many number of times, and then it stops. So like I said, a for loop is the best loop to use when you know how many times you want to do something. And you can know it ahead of time, meaning I know I want them to do this 500 times as the programmer, or you can just let the user type in how many times that they want to do it. So we'll do an example that actually does something useful, and then that will lead us into doing the nested for loops. So let's do another example with this. Let's figure out what the factors of a number are. And factors is it like probably a high school math concept. I'm not going to go to too detail what factors are, but a factor is basically two numbers you can multiply together to get to another number. So if I ask, what are the factors of 8? Well, you can take 1 and 8 and multiply them together, and the answer is 8. So one of the factors of 8 is 1 and 8. You can also multiply 2 and 4 together, right? So other factors of 8 are 2 and 4. So we're going to do like a little calculation to figure out what the factors of a number are. So let's comment this out for a second. So let's say we want the factors of 128. Here, we're going to start at 1. The reason why we're going to start at 1 is because if we start at 0, there is nothing you can multiply times 0 to get 128, right? Because everything times 0 is 0. So we would never get anything with 1. So let's do an if statement in here. We're going to say if 128 divided by the number, not divided by the number, mod, you should have seen the mod in your reading, number is equal to 0. If you didn't read the material and didn't see, what the mod does is it takes the remainder. So it's going to take 120, instead of 128, let's start off smaller. Let's start off with 16. Let's just start off with a smaller number to make it easier to explain. So we're just going to say, if the 16 divided by this number, but take the remainder, what's the remainder of this division? If that remainder is 0, then it is a factor. I said the math here isn't that important, but just understanding the programming concepts of controlling the loop and doing the if statements is important. So it is a factor, so let's print it out. System.out.println we'll just print out the number itself. That is a factor. And then we'll print out after the loop. Okay, so what's going to happen here? We're going to have a for loop. It's going to start, then this variable is going to start at 1, as long as that is less than or equal to 16. And 16 is just a number I pulled out of the air. I'm just saying I want the factors of 16. And then as long as that's true, I'm going to execute this code. And then at the end of the loop, I'm going to increase the number by 1. So at the beginning, number is 1 less than or equal to 16. That's true. So I'm going to do this code. So now I'm going to say 16 divided by 1. What is the remainder? I don't care about what the actual whole number is, but what is the remainder? So 16 divided by 1, it's actually 16 with a remainder of 0. So this right here is equal to 0. And so 0 equals 0 is true. So I'm going to print it out. Okay. The next time, it's the end of the loop. So now number is going to be equal to 2. So I say 2 less than or equal to 16. That's true. So now I'm going to say 16 divided by 2. What is the remainder? That remainder is still 0. So that right there will be true. And I'll do this right, and I'll do that part. End of the loop, we do the update. Number is now 3. 3, this right here is still true. Now we do 16 divided by 3. What is the remainder? 16 divided by 3 is 5, remainder 1. So this remainder is going to be 1. So now we're saying 1 is equal to 0. That's false. Skip this. And now we're at the end of the loop and it kind of repeats itself. So if we run this, we'll see those are the factors of 16. Let's make this more explicit. So it'll be number and then times what the other number. What do I need to type in? 16 divided by a number. There you go. That'll actually tell us both of the factors, what you got to multiply together. So 1 times 16 is 16, right? 2 times 8 is 16. 4 times 4 is 16. 8 times 2, and then 16 by 1. You see they kind of flip and reverse after there, which is fine because all of those are still true. All those are still ways you can multiply to get 16, right? Let's put 25. You run that. There you go. Oops. You got to put 25 everywhere. There you go. 1 times 25, 5 times 5, and 25 times 1. There are no other whole numbers you can multiply together to get 25. All right. So let's put 519. 519. 519. There might not be any. I don't know. No, there are. So those are the numbers you can multiply together to get 519. All right. So now, just like we did with the example earlier, we'll let the user type in what number they want to get the factors of. Number for factors, whatever, just make it descriptive. Number for factors. And then here, we just need to change all these to this variable instead of having a specific number in there. So now what I can type in whatever number I want, 111, and those are the factors for 111. Run it again. Number of factors 543. Those are the factors for 543. One more. 127, and those are the factors for 127. So that's how we've used this for loop to execute the same code over and over again. Okay, so the last part of the material for this week is talking about nested for loops. So nested for loops is when you have a for loop inside of another for loop. And what does that look like? So let's just comment out this factor stuff for a minute. Because we might come back and use it. I'll just delete it. I'll retype it in if we need to type it in again. So let's say we have this for loop here, and we're going to go from 1 to 10, right? We want to do something 10 times. But we can have another for loop inside of it for, let's just say other. I mean, you can name these variables whatever you want to name them. Other will be equal to 0. And as long as the other is less than 5, other plus equals 1. You know, I just randomly chose the numbers in 5. There's really nothing to those numbers. And so what we're going to do inside of here, we're just going to print out something. We'll look at the output and analyze it and see why it did the output it did and how these nested for loops work. So let's print out some values in here, and then we'll analyze it and talk about why it's like that. So inside this inner for loop, we're going to print out what other is. All right, other, and then we'll put a space. And then here we'll make a new line. Print ln, just print a blank line. Here we'll print out what number is. This will all hopefully be clear to you in a minute. Number plus, there we go. All right. So first I want to look at the output with you, and then we'll discuss why it looks like that. So I'll run this. Let me actually make it shorter so it all fits on there at once. 7. There we go. We can see it all at once. So what's happening here? How am I getting this output? So we have this outer for loop, right? It's going to start at 0. As long as it's less than 7, it's going to execute all of this code. Just for one moment, ignore that it has another for loop in it. It doesn't matter what code is inside of here. It'll just execute all of it. That's what this for loop is doing. The number starts at 0. As long as that number is less than 7, it'll execute all of this code. And then for the update, we'll just add 1 onto it. And so what is the code doing? The first thing it's doing is it's going to print out whatever the number is, right? That's the first thing it does, is just print out the number. Then it does some other printout stuff, and then it goes to the next line. So when we look at this, you know, the first printout we get right here is this. And so this 0 corresponds to this line right here, because number starts out being 0, and the first thing we do is print out number and then a colon and a space. Right there, we get the number colon space. Like I said, don't worry about the other for loop yet, but let's just look at doing this loop. So we do some other stuff, and then we come back up to this loop. We added 1 onto the number. Number is now 1. So we say, okay, print out 1 colon space. And there we go. We get 1 colon space. Do the loop. Update the number to 2. That's still true. Execute this code. 2 colon space. And there we go. We get 2 colon space. And so on and so forth until at the end we get 6 colon space, you know, whatever the rest of the printout is. And then that's the end of the loop. And why is that the end? Because once a number gets to 6, we print out the 6. We do the rest of the stuff. We do a new line. We update it. 6 plus 1 is 7. So now we're going to say 7 less than 7. That's false. If I would have put less than or equal to, it would have been true, but I just put less than. So 7 less than 7 is false. So we skipped it, everything, and we go to after the loop. So that's kind of explaining this outside loop. So let's look at the inside loop, the inner loop, the nested loop. Okay, so the first time number was 0. So we print out 0:0, which is exactly what we get, 0:0. So now we're going to do another loop. We're going to use a different variable. This one's just called other, but it's just a variable name. You can name it whatever you want. So we'll say as long as that other is less than 5, then we want to print out other space. And then that loop will happen how many ever times it needs to happen until this is false. So it'll be when other is 0, other 1, other 2, other 3, other 4. All of those are fine and it'll execute. But as soon as other gets to be 5, when other is 5, it says 5 less than 5. That's false. So we will skip this and go to the code after the loop. So that's what we're seeing here. We're seeing it print out 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. That is this loop right here. So once that's finished, we go to after it. This just prints out a new line. We're at the end of the outer loop. So we're like, okay, come back up here. Number was 0. We add 1 onto it. Number is now 1. So we print out 1: space, which is what we get. And then we do the inner loop again, which will print out 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. And that's what we're seeing happen there again. So that's how nested loops work. You have an outer loop that executes, as long as that is true. And then it executes all of the code inside of it. It doesn't matter what the code is. The code inside just so happens to have another loop. So you will execute this loop how many ever times, as long as that is true. You could have another one inside of here. Put the actual what belongs in there. That's fine. Inside of there, you can have another loop. You can have these nested as deep as you need it to happen. What are the use cases for this? There are use cases. Certainly. Let's say for this, maybe a use case would be like locations on the surface of the earth. So you have like latitude and longitude, will get you locations on the surface of the earth, right? So you can just say latitude and longitude, and that will let you go over all the latitude and longitudes for the surface of the earth. That's a use case. Let's say if you had another loop in here, let's keep with the same theme. You could do, say, latitude, longitude, and altitude. That could be another use case, meaning where on the surface of the earth are you and how high in the air are you over, that location on the earth. That's a use case for having nested loops. You're not going to see anything that complicated in your homework for this, basic level programming course, but just so you can understand, there are use cases to have nested loops. But for us, we won't see anything other than 2 nested for loops like this. And so just like with our previous example, right here, I'm putting 7. I'm hard coding the value 7. It doesn't have to be. We can say system.out.println, enter a number. Oops, int whatever, doesn't matter what the name of it is. Next int, and we'll do it that many times. The outer loop will do that many times. If we run that, there, if we just enter in 4, you know, it does it 4 times, right? If I type in 53, it does it 53 times. Well, it counts up to 52. Okay. So we can also base the inner loop based on whatever number this is. Let's see if we put number here. What's going to happen? Let's run it and see. Let's say if I put in the number 3. Let's put in a bigger number so we can see more examples of it. Say if we put in 7. Notice how things have changed, right? So we said the number is 7, right? Or this AAA is 7, right? So we're going to say the number starts out being 0. 0 is less than that, so it'll happen, right? So now we're going to go, you know, we'll print out 0 colon, which we get. And then we're going to say, okay, for the inner loop, we're going to say the other starts out to be 0, but now as long as the other is less than whatever number is. So what is number right now? Well, number is this outer loop. And so number starts out being 0. So here I'm going to say 0 less than 0. That is false. So we skip our loop and we just print a new line. And that's why you don't see anything else printed here. Because at the beginning, in the first time, number is 0. So here I'm checking, is other less than 0? That is false. So we don't do anything in this for loop. Okay, so we get to the end of this outer loop. We come back up here. We increase number by 1. So number is now 1. So we'll print out 1 colon, and we get it. There's our 1 colon. And so now other is 0, other less than 1. That's true. So we print out other. And that's what we get, 0. Okay. End of our for loop. We increase other. Other is now 1. Remember, number is 1 and other is 1 now. So 1 less than 1 is false. Skip our loop. Go to after the loop. It's the end of the loop. So our number was 1. Now number is going to be 2 because we increased it by 1. Number is now 2. Print out 2 colon, which we get. So start out other is 0. 0 less than 2 is true. So we print out our 0. End of the loop. Increase other by 1. Other is 1. Number is still 2. 1 less than 2 is true. So we print out our 1. So what this lets us do is each time through the loop, we count up to the number that the outer loop is. Kind of makes like this this kind of triangle pattern. Hint, 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 assignment. And that's all I'll help you on the assignment. One more example with this nested for loop, and then we'll wrap it up and we'll go to any questions you may have. All right, let's revisit our theme with getting the factors of a number, right? So we'll still just say enter a number. We'll have an outer loop go up to that number. Let's say if we want to get the factors of all numbers up to a certain number. So if I put in 10, I want to get the factors of 1, the factors of 2, the factors of 3, the factors of 4, so on and so forth. Okay, that's what we're going to use for our example. So here we're just going to have the user type in a number. We're going to get it in. So we're going to start at 1, and we're going to go up to or equal to the number they typed in. Here, we want to get the factors of the number. So just print out the number, and then inside of here is where we want to get the factors of the number itself. Remember, this is kind of a rehash of what we did earlier in the video. So whenever I post this video, you can review that code in more depth. But this is just kind of how we got the factors of a number. So we said if the remainder of that number is equal to 0, then it is a factor, and then we'll just print it out. System.out.print print out other, and then put a space. Is that right? Yeah, there we go. If we run this, if we type in 10, it's going to count up all the numbers and then give us their factors. So we typed in 10, so we start out at 1. The factors of 1 are just 1. It's 1 times 1. That's the only factor. So now we go to 2. The factors of 2 are that. Then we go to 3, the factors of 3. Then we go to 4, the factors of 4. Then we go to 5, the factors of 5. Then we go to 6, and we do the factors of 6. So on and so forth. So that's just an example of how to use a nested for loop. Like I said, nested just means a for loop inside of another for loop. And there is no practical limit to how deeply nested you can go. It's just, there needs to be a use case, and there needs to be a reason why you keep nesting for loops. And there are use cases to nest for loops. Okay, so that covers a rehash of last week, the while loop. It covers the material for this week, which is a for loop and nested for loops. It also gives you a very good hint at how to do your assignment. And so I will now open it up to any questions you may have. All right, nothing heard so far, nothing in the chat yet. I will stand by for about 1 more minute should you have any questions. As always, this video will get posted up on the course site a little bit later today. And as always, if you have any questions or have any issues at all, please email me and ask. I have a fair number of you asking questions all the time. That's great. That's what I'm here for. I'm here to assist you as best as I possibly can and give you direction and instruction to help you learn this material. So if you're having problems, please let me know and please ask your questions. But again, I'll stand by about 1 more minute and then we'll wrap it up. Yes, Tyler, I see your question. And yes, as soon as we get ready to wrap this up, I'll stay on a little bit longer for you.
So I have a question. For the assignment, I know that we have to do like 2 different codes. Would it be okay if we nested that same code within that, or you just want 2 separate codes?
Well, I mean, you'll put them both inside of like the same assignment, but really for your assignment, you should have something like the first loops to do the pyramid, if I could spell right. So, whatever loops you need to do to make that pyramid number structure, you'll put all that right there. Okay. And then after those loops are done, you will do the loops to make the square, the square of numbers, and you'll put those there. So, okay. So these will not be inside of each other. They are separate. But to do those, you will need to have like a nested for loop in there.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. All right, we'll go ahead and wrap this up, and I'll get the video posted a little bit later today. I'm going to stop the recording, but Tyler, just stay on, and we'll have the further discussion. So if the rest of you can please drop off, and have a good weekend.